What is the meaning or significance of Sorrow's Domain in the Roblox game Grace? I found myself asking this question because when I played through Sorrow's Domain, I thought it was one of the coolest things I had ever done on Roblox, frankly. Whenever I enjoy something, especially to this degree, I often like to ask myself, why did I enjoy it so much? Why do I feel such a need to talk about it? Why do I feel such a need to explain this to someone? So, in that sense, part of this video is just me giving into that. But in this case, I think there's a little bit more to that. You see, Grace is a unique game on Roblox because it is explicitly Christian. No, it doesn't just have religious themes like some games, it is a Christian game. And that has a lot of implications for not only the gameplay, but how we interpret the gameplay and the messages we take away from the game. And I think that Sorrow and Sorrow's Domain is a perfect example of that. And so I want to talk about it. So, if we want to understand the meaning of this entity and the domain, where do we start? Well, how about the documents that the game neatly provides for us? You see, within the shop, there is a Documents tab in which you will accumulate documents over the course of your gameplay, and they reveal various things about the entities you encounter, who you are, the domains, the sort of mechanics or lore behind the game, as well as God himself, and even Satan. Not only do these documents have some fantastic art and look incredible, but they do a good job of capturing what the entity is. So, to take a non-Sorrow example for a moment, let's look at Dozer. Dozer's gameplay mechanic is that when he appears on screen, you have to stop moving and crouch down. The significance, as we can see through the document, is that you are quite literally bowing down to something. You are recognizing that there is something higher than yourself, that you are not the most important person, and that sometimes we need to just stop and listen and sit with whoever else is higher. In this case, of course, it is God. With that in mind, let's look at Sorrow's document. Oh, first off, this looks awesome. This is yet another very cool looking document. But we don't have any explanation. We don't have any definition of what sorrow is. We just have a Bible verse and 2 words. Love yourself. So, if that's the case, let us turn to the Bible and see what it has to say. The document in game says 30 and 31, but for the sake of context, I will back up to 28. One of the scribes approached God and heard them disputing, and perceiving that he answered them well, he questioned Jesus, which is the first commandment of all? So we are talking about the 10 commandments here, first seen in Exodus. Jesus answered, the first is, Hear, Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God from your whole heart, from your whole soul, from your whole mind, from your whole strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So, you might read this passage and initially think, what does this have to do with sorrow? This passage is telling us to love God and love other people. But is that what sorrow's about? In fact, if we turn to tragedy, which is the entity within sorrow's domain, we will notice that tragedy seems to be about our life breaking down. So, in this sense, is sorrow just meant to be a lack of love toward other people? Well, there might be an aspect of that, but I think what's really being hidden here is this piece right here. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. It is very common, especially when talking about these 2 commandments, that I will hear people make the argument that if these are the first 2 commandments, then where are we supposed to take care of ourselves? Clearly, we are supposed to be selfless people who take absolutely no care of ourselves at all. Because why would we? This is clearly telling us to love other people, love God, and where do we love ourselves in that? Well, it's right there. As yourself. This implies that you have a level of love for yourself. Otherwise, how can you love the neighbor with the same love you show yourself? In a way, this can be seen in Sorrow's gameplay mechanic itself. It rains down and you have to cover yourself up, you have to protect yourself from it. I think this fits quite well. But so far we've talked about Sorrow as it appears in the base game, just as one of many entities. Now let's actually talk about Sorrow's domain. When you first enter it, you find yourself falling into a sea of blood, with only some land masses there that ironically are more of a hindrance than a help. You notice a sanity meter at the top of your screen, and the instructions before this domain give you 2 pieces of advice. Break the orbs, look out for the eyes. Well, what are those eyes? This is tragedy. Tragedy is meant to represent a very literal tragedy. It could be the death of someone you love. It could be your life falling apart. In fact, looking at the document, it says these very things. Tragedy in this sense is manifested as a serpent that chases you and very suddenly pops out of the water and consumes you immediately, which relates quite well to tragedy in real life. Comes out of nowhere and swallows you whole, and all of a sudden everything around you is dark. What's interesting about this domain itself is the further you progress into it, the worse things seem to get. Pretty quickly, lightning begins striking the sea of blood, which will very rapidly drain your sanity. It's basically an insta-kill if you're caught in there. Similarly, after a little bit, nuclear bombs start dropping because, sure, I guess. Forgive me if I'm forcing meaning into something that was just meant to be a gameplay mechanic to make the boss fight harder over time, but I think in a way what this is saying is the more we try to fight it ourselves, the worse it might end up getting. And I particularly say this because I want you to look at what happens in the ending. We are standing on a platform doing nothing, and ultimately God is the one that defeats the tragedy, not us. It's not like that one level in Ultra Kill where you shoot the serpent in the face and it blows up and dies. In this case, we merely evaded tragedy and we're just trying to keep above the surface, just trying to maintain our sanity until God comes and rescues us. In fact, thinking about this again, I realize that really what's going on here is, as opposed to running from tragedy, we stand and, specifically with God, face tragedy. We stop running from it, we stop trying to hide from it, we stop evading what really happened, and we allow the Lord to come in and be there with us. And that is what defeats sorrow. That is what defeats tragedy, not running from it, not trying to get away from it, but standing and just accepting it. And that takes the power away from sorrow. And I think this is reflected further in the final line of the song that plays during this outro. So, I think that is the meaning or significance of Sorrow's Domain in this game. It's a pretty short little video. I didn't intend it to be super long. I just really enjoyed this fight. I enjoyed this experience, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. I think one thing it highlights too is that you can make a game that is overtly Christian and have it be insanely fun. The fact that the game is Christian doesn't mean that the gameplay suffers because of it. And at the same time, the game is good, and I feel like the spiritual aspects of this game don't suffer because of it. I think the other domains are good too. I think I could probably spend a few minutes talking about almost any entity or thing in the game, but Sorrow's Domain stuck out to me the most, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. So that's what I did. Thanks for watching.